Welcome to the Mind Like Books podcast. My name is Philip, and before we get into today's episode, I have a public service announcement. You are not your podcast. Your false sense of comfort and the illusion of having friends is not going to improve your life. This is your life. It's ending 1 minute at a time. We shall deliver you from your expensive noise-cancelling headphones and cozy apartments. You should sit on your ass right now. Think about your life. Think about what you really want. Get down to it. If you don't do it, I'll go in there and slap you in the face. The only thing that's stopping you is yourself. Right, guys?
I'm a space monkey, so I just push buttons and pull levers.
That sounds right.
Yes.
I was just very excited at all your gesturing. It was really interesting.
This is a book that I think influenced many people's lives in many weird ways. And that's why we decided to talk about it after the previous episode of the Starship Troopers, which I think is strangely the same and strangely completely the opposite. We'll talk about that. But I'm very excited to talk about this book, one of my all-time favorites. And one of the most memorable books, I think, and movies. So welcome back. Thank you for coming. So how are you, Paolo? It's been a while we talked.
I'm good. Yeah. My cat has been strangely friendly, and she's going to finish her lunch now, maybe. So, yeah, that's good. You can see her behind me.
Yeah.
Paolo is reading a lot, and I can't keep up. We read the Snow Country together, and Paolo's already halfway through the Way of the Kings, the 1,000-page book, and I haven't even started. How is that going?
It's going pretty well. To be honest, I didn't want to tell you this, but I couldn't resist, so I'm moving forward. I'm about page 600.
Of course. Just go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I've just started a new job, so I am taking a little break, but the episodes will continue. We've recorded a bunch, so don't worry. How's your reading going, Paul?
Yeah, after this book, Fight Club kind of sent me down a weird rabbit hole.
Oh my god.
I've just been reading books on Stoicism for the past 2 weeks. So I'm a Stoic now, guys. I'm completely in control. No, it's quite interesting, actually. So, but I think it ties into some of the elements of the book, actually.
Okay. So, of course, today we're talking about the book and movie Fight Club by an author that his name shall not be pronounced correctly. So, before you attempt the right pronunciation, I'm gonna say it the Czech way. I'd like Paolo to say it the Italian way, and then we'd like the most Australian accent, please, from Paul.
Sure.
So in Czech we say Palahniuk, which sounds awful.
Sounds like a sweet.
Yeah,
maybe. To me in Czech it sounds like something awful. It sounds like something broken and rotten. That kind of fits the person. Never mind. How does it sound in Italian?
Well, I've always called him Palahniuk.
Oh, interesting.
Which, I don't know. It sounds like nothing.
It reminds me of hňup in Czech. Hňup means
really?
jerk. So that's also very topical.
I thought
so how about the English? Yeah.
His parents are is Ukrainian?
Yeah,
Ukrainian and French.
Okay. So in Australian, was it Chuck Palahniuk? some kind of foreigner name, is it? Some racist remark.
So I prepared a clip and I just listened to it and I completely forgot again. It's like Chuck Palahniuk.
I thought it was Chuck Palahniuk.
Palahniuk. That sounds great. I'll put a clip here for the author saying it himself. That's the best way we could do this.
Hi, my name is Chuck Palahniuk.
Anyway, the plan on this episode is to discuss how we came to know this book, who the author is, the usual impressions with and without spoilers. And on top of that, I'd like to talk about also Mr. Robot, my all-time favorite TV show. Also the sequels. There is Fight Club 2, Fight Club 3, Fight Club 4. There's a children's book, if you haven't seen any of that. And that's about the plan. We're also going to talk about other stuff that Chuck Palahniuk has written. And we might do a follow-up episode if we deem to do so. You'll see when we get to the other fact stuff he's written. I'd be up for it, like an extra R-rated episode.
Was it a book you couldn't get through? Was it Haunted?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that. But to start with, I'd like to talk about like how did you come to this? Because I feel like there's always an interesting story to this book when I talk to people about how they got to know it and how they perceived it and understood it at the time they first read it or saw the movie the first time. Do you remember?
Yeah, because I only just read the book recently, and I saw the movie when I was in university. I remember like a couple of days later or something, I went and bought a book on like quotes by like Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah.
And I picked it up and I was like, I have no idea what this fucking guy is talking about. I couldn't follow it at all. Yeah, I think probably misunderstood a lot of the movie, I guess. Bought it again later on Blu-ray, and it's actually quite interesting because Palahniuk does an audio track of the movie. Because he was quite...
I'd love to do that, actually.
Yeah, he was quite heavily involved in it. So I kind of understood it a bit better after that, I think. It's one of these things where I was like, wow, the movie's actually better, I felt, in some ways.
I would agree. It's much more visceral and, hit you in the face with the visuals works very much in favor of this.
Oh, and the sound as well. It's, like, super intense.
And the sound and music, I used to listen to the soundtrack all the time.
Yeah, the soundtrack's great. Yeah. But those punching noises and everything, it's like really heavy.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's another one of those manly movies. If you're into that, we highly recommend The Northman.
Oh yeah,
just came out this year. Awesome man movie.
So first, I'm one of the very, very few people who probably read the book before watching the movie.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then I watched the movie a few years after, so I kind of like went the opposite way.
How did you like the book though? Did it like change your way of thinking or something?
I guess we can talk about this later, but
okay.
At that time when I read it, and again I was 18, this was unfortunately 14 years ago, it left a strong impression on me, but overall I didn't like the book. I don't really have a positive opinion on it.
This is from my previous part of life. I feel like I'm a completely different person than when I read this book. And I used to be super hard into games and programming and technical stuff, and nobody would like talking to me because
you're a nerd,
technical bullshit. Yes. And then I read this book at the same time, and I was like, "Have you read this book? Have you read this movie? It's so shit. Let's beat each other up." And people were like, "Oh my god, it's this guy." So that's what happened with me. So I talked to people about this book, and they always go either way. Or maybe there's 3 ways people go after this book. One of them is like Paul. They're like, oh, let's. This is very thought-provoking. I'll study nihilism and philosophy, and I'll read Nietzsche and stuff like that. And the other people are like, finally, somebody understands how to be a rebel. Let's blow shit up. Let's do this. And the last group of people, I guess that's where I fall into, is nothing in life really matters, and you can do whatever the fuck you want.
That's very nihilistic.
Yeah,
that's similar. Yeah, so that's why this book is similar to the Starship Troopers in my eyes, because there's so much packed into this shit, and you can find so much crap into it, and people can understand it in so many ways. And it appeals to people who want to be rebels. It appeals to people who want to destroy society. It appeals to people who like conspiracies. It appeals to people who like fighting and manly things, and it appeals to so many kind of groups of stereotypes. So everybody finds something, but nobody thinks about it in the sense it's a whole package, I don't think. So hopefully that's why this podcast exists. And hopefully we're going to give you a complete point of view from all sides. Hopefully.
Well, I think as well, just a comment about what you said, Palahniuk as well, he said that he was kind of frustrated that culture hadn't really given men sort of a selection of narratives to choose from.
Yeah.
Where women have so many. Joy Luck Club and How to Make an American Quilt and all this. But what do we have? We have Fight Club and The Matrix. That's it. You don't have
Starship Troopers.
Well, Starship Troopers, but maybe it's a bit older. But
And also, we have...
the Northman.
300.
No, 300.
I can't believe I haven't quoted 300 yet on this podcast. I always quote it.
Are you a fan of 300?
I love it so hard.
Yeah, me too.
I don't like it.
Spartans, ready your breakfast and eat hearty. For tonight, we died in hell.
No. I was just going to say as well, like the Fight Club novel and the movie weren't actually successful. The book was going to be pulped or something, I heard before, until the movie kind of started to get some traction. But yeah, and the movie didn't really, it only really took off after sort of like DVD sales and stuff like that. So it wasn't a commercial success.
I'm not really sure if it was a commercial success, but I do remember that, at least for my generation in Italy, it was very, very popular. Like, it's one of those movies that even now, if you ask people, basically everyone has watched.
I think now we're getting to the point where people forget it, so please watch it if you haven't seen this.
I think it's kind of become like a culture though, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
Especially some of the quotes and everything.
It will stay popular just because of the fact that Brad Pitt is in it.
I remember after watching the movie too, I was like, man, I want that body. So like, I was like working out for like about 4 weeks, and I was like, fuck, this is really hard. Yes. I'm gonna give up. Back to the sofa. Yeah. We worked out for like 5 or 6 days a week for like 3 months or something to get that shape. I was like, yeah.
He did look like it.
Yeah. That was like very, very kind of, that was the body that you wanted. Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the 300, all the specs and apps were CGI.
It's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, so not to go off on a tangent again, but I wanted to mention like why or what happened in my life. So I was a programmer, and a lot of programmers at the time read this book. That's a Czech book about vampires. Where it's like a bloodbath, gory, super action book.
Yeah.
I wanted Paolo to read it.
Yes.
So one day on this episode, maybe we could even include Paul, because it's a super manly book again. And it's a Czech weird like writer who's a super weirdo, and it's like the most action-packed book I've ever read. I wanted to say I was like a programmer. I was very young. I was like 18, and everybody was reading this like Czech vampire bullshit. And then everybody found this like Fight Club book in the movie, and everybody was like, "Have you seen this shit? This is the shit. This is how you live. This is the new philosophy. Have you seen how he blows up his face in the movie? Oh my fucking god! I have to see it." And everybody was like talking about this movie at school, and I was like, what is this? And then I watched it too, and I was like very naive at the time, and it was like the first time that was something like in your face graphic. And I remember I was like really hit by it, and I read the book shortly after that, and I was like, okay, I've graduated from high school. I'm going to just spend the summer punching people and like working on what I want to do. So I signed up to a kickboxing like club, and I really liked martial arts all my life, but I never had the courage to sign up to any gym. So I finally did. And I also always wanted to be like a CGI animator. So that summer I spent the whole summer just punching like stuff and animating this movie. So I made like a short movie. Not the punches. It was like an alien movie, but anyway.
The aliens did kung fu?
No. It's like a comedy skit.
Okay.
You can watch it. Maybe I'll put a link here. It's like old now.
Okay.
It really changed my view on life in the sense that you should learn more about yourself. So at that time, the famous line that I really touched me personally or hit home was, "How much do you know about yourself unless you've experienced some shit?" Like in the book and the movie, they say, "How much do you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight?" Mm. So I was like, I do want to experience that, and so that all happened, but it's a long time ago.
Wow. Okay.
My father watched the movie, and he wanted to ban me from like reading it and watching it because he was like scared I'm gonna be an anarchist or something.
Yeah, like, because that was around like what 2099 or something. 19. Yeah. I like, because I'm a bit older than you guys. Like I remember growing up, like my mother freaking out about like D&D, like Dungeons and Dragons. At that time, like, she was convinced that people were joining like satanic cults and people were killing themselves and stuff over this game. This is like in the late 1980s. Yeah. But, every generation we just have these ridiculous moral panics about something.
My mother had it with
I never heard about
Japanese
moral panic over Fight Club.
Which is kind of ironic given where we all are now. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, I was banished from playing like Tekken or watching Japanese anime or things like that. She had no power to enforce the banishment, so did it anyway. But
what was the reasoning though?
Do you know the manga and anime called Hokuto no Ken? Like First of the North Star? It's a super famous manga from the 80s, which is extremely gory. Like the guy literally makes people explode. Okay. And because in Italy the axiom was cartoon equals for children, they would air Hokuto no Ken during children's shows in the afternoon. And so, lots of parents complain.
looks awesome. I'm looking at pictures.
It's super famous. I'm surprised you've never heard of it.
I don't really read or watch anime, so...
Yeah, me neither.
It seems like something I would love so much at the time. I want to mention the connection to Starship Troopers. We already talked about it. And I want to read a comment from the author. So Heinlein said that the book was like saying the truth. It was like necessary to talk about the youth and the military and all these like beliefs. And very similar with the Fight Club book, the author wanted to like express something that's a problem in society and something that should be talked about. And many people thought it was very controversial and very bad and shouldn't be read and all this. And they said it's nihilistic. And I like his response about that. After it has been described as nihilistic, he said that he would call it romantic. And it's mistakenly seen as nihilistic because they express ideas, or he expresses ideas that others do not believe in. So they want to see it in a bad way, but he's not trying to say that we should kill ourselves. He's trying to say something completely different and people just misinterpret it, which happens with the Starship Troopers as well, I would guess. Because...
Yeah, I didn't really find that connection so much.
When I was reading it, I felt the same way. I felt like I'm trying to break out of conventions and oppose, not authority, but oppose like the common beliefs.
I see. I think like Palahniuk was sort of, I was reading an interview with him and the guy was trying to like kind of back him into this corner of saying you're just sort of kind of capitalizing on sort of toxic masculinity and all these other things like that. And Palahniuk wasn't really buying it. He was just saying, look, no, I have sympathy for young men who feel panicked about their lives and they're worried that their life is not turning out the way they want it to be, kind of thing. So he kind of, I think he wrote it some more like from a sympathetic viewpoint, actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about the writer. I put some photos. I always like to look at the writer's photos. I love his like outlook or like fashion, and he looks so pretentious. Like he looks so much like a pretentious prick, but also kind of cool at the same time. And he looks like he has something like to tell you in your face. So I put some pictures in the shared document. I like the one with the dog. He's like sitting with the dog on his lap and he's like, I own this place. This is my dog. The second photo, he's like a Shakespearean writer or something outfit. And he's like judging people. And the last photo we have here is like a super overconfident look in the camera and it says disappointed in the Disney font on his shirt.
Font, yeah.
I love that shirt.
Have you actually listened to any interviews with him?
So many. It's so much fun to listen to him, yes.
Yeah, he's quite generous with his time and everything and his advice. I actually quite like the guy.
I love him, yes.
One of the interviews I was listening to, he gave some really interesting advice to young writers who come to him. You know, they're very early 20s and he's like, look, just go out for the next 10 years and make some bad friends and do some stupid shit. You'll have some stories to tell after that.
Exactly.
But, you know, because he's from like a journalist background, so he's not really creating anything. He's just sort of piecing together bits and pieces of other people's lives and creating a narrative out of it. And that kind of comes across in his style, this sort of very minimalistic kind of writing style that he has as well.
Speaking of experiencing shit and having something to talk about, he's an avid like supporter and member of the Cacophony Society and the Santa Rampage Club. Have you heard that? I was like, what?
What's the first one?
I was like, excuse me, what is this? I was like reading out about him. So there was a San Francisco Suicide Club that's like 100 years ago. long story short, it's like underground Jackass. Like people just dare each other and do bullshit, and then they like laugh about it, and they want to like at the time oppose society and do just like push themselves to the limit and experience real life and just find their limits and understand who they really are. So that was like the thing. This group transformed into the Cacophony Society, which is one of his hobbies, the writers. And they just gather random people from around the world, and they want to promote free spirits and the pursuit of experiences, exactly what you said. So they just want to do some shit and then just like experience just raw emotion, raw like challenges, and just hopefully not get killed in the process. I hope.
Okay, I'm checking them out now.
Yeah.
He's also a member of the Santa Claus.
So there is another event that's very similar, and that's called the Santa Rampage, which is a pub crawl where people get horribly drunk, dress up in Santa Claus costumes, and then just fuck shit up. So basically they just go around the city being drunk and play pranks on people, and they just do bad things, but they just want to like have a story to tell. So that's exactly what you described.
Yeah, that sounds like him.
Yeah. I didn't know this was something he did. It's very amusing.
The thing as well, I was researching, he seems very masculine, but he's gay as well. I didn't know that.
I just found out now that you told me.
Yeah, he said that, because I was reading this interview and the guy was like, why didn't you come out? And he's like, well, my partner didn't want to be exposed to any kind of fame or anything like that. And his partner was from like a working class, blue collar working background as well. And it just wasn't anything relevant to them kind of thing.
He does it like a, in quotation mark, normal person. Okay, I'm gay, whatever, like who cares? Like I'm doing what I want, so get out. I love it. I love him for that. That's like... Yeah.
I think he's very well dressed. So. Well, a lot of the gay guys I hanged out with in university, they were always impeccably well groomed. And I was a slob.
He's kind of, like you can kind of see it, but not really. You can completely miss it.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay. He's still in good shape for 60 too.
Yeah, he looks like he's not 60 at all.
No. Yeah.
So he's definitely taking care of himself. So all these like shenanigans and Cacophony Society and all this bullshit looks like it's made him a better person, if anything. Definitely hasn't been permanently damaged. Although he has been permanently scarred from what happened to his father, which we should mention. Yeah. Have you heard about this?
No, Paolo? But I saw it on your notes.
His father was murdered by his girlfriend's ex-husband?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He got an affair, started as an online like blind date something with a person who had like a strange nickname. I think it was called Kismet or something. And they met and they got together, but then the ex-boyfriend was a convict or escaped prison, I don't remember, and he just straight up just shot them, and then he got the death sentence.
Yeah, the guy had a bit of a checkered history of sort of violent crime and stuff like that, so...
It's a very good episode on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I have a very conflicted feelings about. I don't want to promote it too much, but I give credit where it's due. This episode was awesome with Chuck Palahniuk.
There's a good line I've read recently. You can consider someone's view without adopting it.
Exactly. Joe Rogan is very much the cosmopolitan like version for men. Like the Cosmopolitan magazine for men, that's Joe Rogan.
Yeah, it was a good interview. I would recommend it as well. So.
And one of the things that he mentioned, and I really remembered, was how he goes to public readings and he reads his crazy shit. I didn't know this aspect about him until I heard this podcast. And it's a very good thing, and I'm grateful this thing is a thing. That he writes horrible, awful things, but his reasons are very interesting. So he goes to these writers' readings and he reads about like kind of horror, gory stories with people masturbating vile shit, and he gets banned from them. And he told on the podcast that he's been to like many readings and he's been banned to most of them because he always reads something awful. And they just don't want to see him again. And one of the readings that he started with was from this book called Haunted. There is this short story called Guts. And he said, I'll read you the story and it's very short. So if you hold your breath, it's going to end before you have to breathe again. So please try to hold your breath. I'll read you the story very quickly. It will be over sooner than you can know. And many people held their breath and 40 of them passed out and he was banned from the readings.
Like, how stupid do you have to be to... Like, if you realize you're about to pass out, or like, what's the purpose of sleep holding your breath?
Yes,
like,
I don't know.
It ties into this story, I guess, that the main character he's like masturbating in the swimming pool.
Yeah. Don't say more, please.
Yeah. He has a bit of an accident. So that kind of feeling of panic or I can't breathe and I'm trying to get to this. There is a line at the beginning too, which is ridiculous. And he knows it. He says, listen to this story as fast as you can hold your breath.
Yeah, it's about... The story is about holding your breath. You should be holding your breath while reading it. It's all that together. So I get what he was trying to do. And this story is like the underground, like your friends will dare you to read it and tell you that you should try to be not disgusted after it. And you're like, yeah, of course I can deal with this shit. And then you read it and you're like, oh, what the fuck is this? But that's all besides the point. My point was that he writes these bad things and people come to him after the readings and they are like, this happened to me. And they tell him like an awful thing. And then the other people write online and they go to forums and they write about like a similar thing that happened to them. And they say, this has been so cathartic. I've never told anybody in my life. I have held this in myself for my entire life. I could never imagine somebody could even listen to me tell this. And I could never imagine somebody actually publicly reading a similar story to anybody ever. And this is so freeing. Thank you. And they like cry and hug him. And he says that this is so healing to people, like knowing that these things are not just them.
Did you hear the story he told about in the workshops about the magazines?
Maybe. Sorry. I think so.
So he said in a writer's workshop that used magazine shops, they never buy National Geographic and Playboy because no one throws those away. So, and someone in the class said, oh, that's why maybe I found a box, like a stash of like Playboys in the forest one time. And he said, suddenly 40 people in the writer's workshop all had their like porn stash story where they found a stash of pornography magazines in the forest somewhere. Mm-hmm. So everyone came out with the same sort of story. Everyone's sort of got these sort of things we don't generally discuss with other people.
Mm-hmm. And so I don't like podcasts where they talk about how bad it is and how horrible it is, and then they don't say what it actually is. So I'm going to give like an example. So skip 5 minutes if you don't want to hear something awful. Because I think it's important to say what you say, like not just talk about it. So in one of the readings, he described a story where one of the daughters of somebody was sexually abused and the uncle was abusing her. And at one point in the story, she has to kill a bird. And when the bird dies, she has to hold it in her hand. And when the final life leaves the body of the bird, the body like twitches. And she gets like a panic attack because it feels the same as when the uncle ejaculates when she's holding his dick.
I remember hearing that. Yeah.
And people were like, the fuck? Get out of this reading club. You'll never welcome again. But then many people also came and they were like, yes, I've been abused and this is so helpful to talk about. Thank you. So here's an example for you. What you're talking about. So it is definitely a set of stories and like ideas that you don't usually come upon if you read stuff.
Well, I think that's from his like journalist background that he's just sort of looking for stories.
Yeah. So before we move into the usual spoilers and stuff, usually we say like, would you recommend this? Like, who is this for? And do you think people should read this? The Fight Club book. Don't read the Haunted book. I don't recommend. We don't recommend that.
I recommend it.
Okay. Talk to Paul afterwards. Don't talk to me. I don't want to hear it.
It's a life lesson.
Yeah.
Don't do that shit in a swimming pool.
Oh my god.
Anyway, you can go first, Paolo.
I would say I would recommend reading it maybe I think it's less so. Okay, let me try to explain what I want to say. I think it's a good book if a book for you is something that makes you think about something and teaches you something and shows you something from a different perspective you haven't thought about. Mm-hmm. In that case, if that's what you're searching for in a book, I would definitely recommend it. If you like books because you like stories and characters and words and more of the narrative part of reading, I would not recommend it. I think it's pretty boring.
Yeah, that's a very well said. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good recommendation. Yeah, I think it's his writing style because he doesn't use many like adjectives. Mm-hmm. He just really focuses on using a lot of verbs.
It's very much to the point and stuff's happening.
That sort of minimalistic sort of style.
It's very readable for people who don't read.
Yeah, it's also very quotable. I think that's also why teenagers like it. Like it has a lot of one-liners.
Exactly. I think it's a very nice example of what the self-help books and like make friends improve your life, go achieve your goals, like lists of like you know those books. So those books, they are kind of saying this, but they are like saying in the completely wrong way, and you're completely missing all the points. And this book is not saying any of that, but it's actually saying all of that in a point that you can actually get, because if you tell a story as example, telling these lessons, it's so much more impactful and meaningful. So I think that's what this kind of is. He wanted to like show what's wrong with society and tell it in a story and not like in a list of bullet points.
Yeah, especially in that time as well, like in the 1990s, that kind of hyper consumerism we're going through, especially in the West. I'll read you this quote, actually. This is... You are not your body and hairstyle, but your capacity for choosing well. If your choices are beautiful, so too will you be. That's not Tyler Durden, that's Epictetus. So, there you go. Even back in the ancient Rome, they were, consumed with the way you looked and what friends you had and stuff like that.
So if you like to think about stuff, if you like the Starship Troopers, I would say definitely read it. If you want stories and fun, don't read this.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good view.
So let's get into spoilers. So the story starts with a narrator who works for a car company, and he's got insomnia and he doesn't really do anything productive. He's very unhappy, and he's very disgruntled about the company who sells cars, because he says if the car is faulty and they need to recall it, if the price of settling the lawsuits outside of court is less than recalling the dangerous cars, the faulty cars, they'll always pay the settlement. So he's just trying to point out like how corrupt everything is. He's unhappy with everything. So he cannot sleep, so he tries to deal with it. And his way of dealing with this is to go to support groups where people have near-death like experiences, or they are about to die because of incurable illnesses, cancer, brain parasites. One of his favorites is the testicular cancer support group. So he goes there to talk to people who actually worry about life, and seeing death makes him feel more alive, and it's the only time he can actually cry and let feelings out and relax. Did you understand it the same way?
No, I just thought you said supergroup instead of support group.
Support group, sorry.
Supergroup. Super testicle cancer support. Sorry.
No, that's good you say that. Somebody actually commented recently, I'd love to listen to your Free Body Problem podcast, but I can't deal with your accent. Sorry, I'm out.
It's a bit harsh.
Yeah, whatever. But I didn't think it was... I know our accents are bad, but I didn't think they were like not understandable. So he goes to these support groups, and it helps him just mentally. And he can finally sleep, and he can finally feel at peace, until he sees another person doing the same thing, and that is faking in these support groups to get their emotions out and feel well with people. And that's Marla, another main character. And Marla is just whatever, she just smokes into people's faces. She pretends she has testicular cancer, even though she's a woman. And she hugs like people. And it completely breaks the main character because he cannot relax anymore. I'm trying to like, should I talk about Bob or not? Do you want to talk about Bob?
Yeah, he kind of comes up again later in the book as well.
So who's Bob?
No, he's the same in the movie as the juicer, who basically was former bodybuilding champion.
Yeah, we didn't say. If people have never read or seen this, so he's an ex-bodybuilder, and because of hormones and like treatment for cancer, he grows giant boobs. So his body is ginormous, and in the support group, he likes to hug people, so he squeezes them with his boobs, and this main character like cries into his boobs. That's the only way he can feel comfortable. So that's the kind of things you get into in this book.
Yeah, this was an interesting thing because the first part of the book was so similar to the movie in some ways that when I was reading it and I rewatched the movie as well, I was like confusing them together sometimes. But
So Marla just messes up his schedule, and they talk it out, and they try to like schedule the support groups so they don't have to meet and they can both enjoy it. And the narrative like jumps around, and because he falls asleep and doesn't know where he is. So at one point he wakes up in an airplane, and then in a job, and in the support group, and then he wakes up at a nudist beach, and he meets this guy Tyler, and Tyler is like naked, and he's building a giant hand made out of logs. That's different.
That was a very like homoerotic passage in that book where he describes Tyler coming out of the ocean and the hair,
which is not in the movie. And I heard many people complain
logs.
about it because they say,
I can see why they cut this.
They couldn't pay Brad Pitt enough to do that.
They become somehow acquaintances with Tyler, and at one point, the main character's apartment explodes because there is a fault with the gas and the fridge and stuff. That's the same in the movie, I think. And everything he has been gathering and saving up for and just like treasuring his precious furniture, everything is just destroyed. And he doesn't have anywhere to go. So he goes to Tyler, and he stays at his place, which is abysmal. I don't remember if this is the same in the movie or in the book.
It is, yeah.
And so they have no running water. It's cold.
It's an abandoned house. Like they are squatting in an abandoned house.
So Tyler wants something in return for the narrator, the main character, for staying in the house, and that's to punch him as hard as he can. So we had this famous scene, and they get into a fight. And we get into all this like philosophy. What do you know about yourself if you've never fought somebody? And can you endure it? And are you a man? And can you like overcome hardship? And if you do that, you actually live a real life, and you can see what life really is. And your life is ending 1 minute at a time, and all this. So a fight club is opened, and they keep inviting people to fight, and they have the famous rules of Fight Club.
One fight at a time.
Yeah, but first rule of Fight Club.
Don't talk about Fight Club.
I don't remember.
Don't talk about Fight Club. Obviously. Second rule of Fight Club, don't talk about Fight Club. So that's the famous line. And then you have to fight if you're there the first time. Everybody has to focus on the fight. The fight is the center of the tension. If somebody's hurt, stop the fight. If the person wants to fight, let's continue to fight. I'm not sure.
Fights go as long as they have to.
Yeah, fights go as long as you have to. So basically every week they gather, and people just get their emotions out by beating the crap out of each other and feeling alive because they're men. And then this secret society, like a cult, escalates, and they start getting homework, and they start fights on the street just to experience. Basically, we talked about the cacophony society, so they do that. They just get into nonsense. They dare each other into nonsense. Most of the times it's a fight, just to have a story to spark up their life, just to experience things and feel more alive.
It's also an egalitarian thing, because in the book it says that, for example, there was the boy who was like a part-time waiter or something like that, who's fighting against this guy who was like a guy with money and whatever. I forgot exactly. Yeah. So it's also like a way to put everyone on the same plane.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes. We get this famous scene that they find, one of the challenges or the dares is they find like a guy who's got a shit job, and they point at him with a gun, and they tell him, I'm gonna come here next week, and if you've not done something to change your job and improve your life and find the job you want to do, I'm gonna shoot you dead. And he's like, oh my god, crying and everything, freaking out. And they show the gun was empty and everything. And it's like a dare to push people to do something with their life. So that's all these stories are about, that kind of like improvement. And so there's the secret organization. Meanwhile, Marla is like dating Tyler and the main character. And we get like this sex scene that's really famous in the movie. Was this in the book? I forgot.
Oh, he wakes up the next day with like a bad dream that he was having sex with Marla, and he discovers like a condom or something in the toilet, kind of thing, like that.
Don't quote me on this. I'm not sure 100%, but I think the writer said that they added this just for the movie, just to be extra edgy. And it was his condition to actually publish the movie. And it was a huge problem with the studio. And he wanted to have 2 lines or 2 things in the movie after the sex scene. One of the quotes was, "I'd like you to give me an abortion."
No, I'd like to have your abortion.
I'd like to have your abortion.
Yes, because the most romantic line would be, I'd like to have your baby. Mm-hmm. So he changed it to, I'd like to have your abortion.
And the second thing was that Marla says, "This is the best fuck I've had since elementary school," or something like that.
Yeah, grade school or something. Yeah. Mm.
So are those in the movie or not? I don't remember.
No, it was changed to, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school in the movie. In the book, it's like, I'd like to have your abortion.
So it is in the book, okay.
Yeah, in the book, it's sort of coming through 2 perspectives. So, like, because the narrator is sort of recalling his dream. And then I think Tyler later on sort of, they can hear them, the narrator can hear them talking to each other or having sex with each other kind of thing. And so, and they're calling each other like butt wipe for some reason.
So this all goes down. The secret society cult escalates, and they have this Project Mayhem, which is like the final plot point. And they want to just have everybody equal, destroy all the bank records, just have everything explode, and have as many people equal as possible, and cause chaos and erase all the debt and all this. They plan to plant these explosives, and there's like this final scene escalation where Tyler and the main character, so the main character doesn't want to do it, so Tyler holds him at gunpoint and he drags him to this house, this tall building, and they want to kill both of them. And Tyler wants to come out of that as a martyr and be worshipped, and that's how his legacy will live on. But the main character...
He's trying to blow up the biggest building or something in the city.
But Marla comes in to interrupt them, and we finally are told, or it's finally 100% revealed, that Tyler and the narrator are the same person. And the narrator makes his first uninterrupted choice, like uninfluenced, un-Tyler influenced choice, and that's he actually shoots himself to kill Tyler.
Let me confirm this, because I have vaguely different memories of this. I think in the movie it is revealed only at this point that they're the same person, but if I remember correctly, in the book it's pretty much confirmed earlier, because at one point he wakes up and he is in his office and he notices that his hands smell like gasoline or something like that.
Yeah.
What I remember is that he understands.
Not in the movie.
Like, not just that the reader understands, like the narrator understands that he's Tyler.
Yeah, he says like, I can't go to sleep because when I go to sleep, Tyler's gonna come out. Yeah,
exactly. So I think in the book he realizes that way before the final confrontation, so that for the final part of the Project Mayhem, essentially there's no Tyler, because he's spending all of his time with Marla, so that essentially Tyler can take over. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, because Marla's also like, they're going to like all night bowling because he can't sleep there, and she's giving him all these like amphetamines to stay awake and stuff like this. So he knows like, as soon as I go to sleep, like Tyler's going to come out. So, and there's the other thing too, when he signs up for a fight club, he signs up for 50 fights. Yeah. He's trying to kill Tyler in the fights. Mm-hmm. And it's really graphic, because in the first fight, it's talking about his teeth get smashed through his lips, and then the second guy snaps his collarbone, and then his tongue gets half chopped off and falls onto the floor and gets kicked away. It's really horrible. So he's well aware of it, like sort of like 70% into the book, I think.
Yeah.
So that he's trying to kill him off, but he doesn't know how. In this case.
Okay, that's a very good.
And he had like the hole in the cheek, I remember, which was referred to like 100 billion times.
Yeah.
Yeah. He makes like the second one when he shoots himself.
Yeah, he has 2 holes in the cheek at the end.
Okay. So in the movie, they stand with Marla and they watch everything explode. But that doesn't happen in the book. In the book, it's revealed that Tyler made a mistake.
Yeah, we laugh at Tyler. Like he's not the cool guy. He's a psychopath. So
Yeah, the ending is famously different between books and movie, between the book and the movie. And like, where do you guys stand with that? Because like most people I know prefer the movie ending, and I think like the author also prefers the movie ending.
I am like torn on the like Tyler is not cool anymore. Like I think the character of Tyler in the movie has a better ending.
Yeah, Tyler in the book kills people too.
He murders his boss, I think.
Yeah, he murders what was it, the commissioner of? Yeah, but he didn't want. Well, the narrator didn't want to. Yeah, but because he kind of liked his boss, he said. But he killed.
Yeah,
he shot
like they
the commissioner of recycling or something.
They kill him.
So the book ends differently. So nothing explodes because the explosions were not made properly. And the narrator, the main character, we don't know the name of the whole time, he gains control. And he shoots himself, but he doesn't kill himself. He wakes up in a hospital. And the secret society, Project Mayhem cult people pretending to be doctors come in and they're like, yes sir, we're here. It's gonna happen next time.
Yeah, exactly. He thinks he's in heaven. Like the ending is supposed to be this thing where like the reader can understand it's like he's in a hospital, like he's in a full white room and clearly he's in a psychiatric hospital, but like the way he sees it is that he's dead and in paradise.
And the doctor is God or something.
So if you haven't read it, Paolo, did you find the Dune reference? I wrote down a Dune reference here. Did you read that?
I saw the one you put, and I think that's very. Of course, that's the main one. I'll leave you the honor to present it. But before that, I have another one because I thought about it today under the shower.
Paul is appalled, by the way, if you see his face, for the listeners.
Yes.
I'm never reading.
Yeah.
Just you wait until our 100th episode special.
So anyway, the final confrontation between Tyler and the narrator, in a way, reminds me of the final confrontation between Alia and the Baron.
Oh yeah,
at the end of Children of Dune. Never be married.
No, I'm reading.
I miss watching Paul's disgruntled face expressions. Because I always see Paul and Greg and he's always like, just don't talk to me about life. So he's like, don't talk to me about Dune.
What?
Yeah, thanks. I didn't think about it. So the reference I thought was about fanatism and the jihad and things getting out of control, becoming a martyr and being a hero to a group of supporters that cannot be controlled and all that. It's the very similar idea in Dune and the Project Mayhem and all these followers and blindly following like a belief, and the leader of that being kind of messed up and not having anything to say about it.
I would say also the fact that in general the figure of the not Messiah necessarily in Fight Club, but kind of like the charismatic leader is dangerous and not something that should be trusted and something that should be, appreciated.
It does get really cultish throughout the book as well. Because I remember when he goes in the book, he goes to try and shut down one of the fight clubs. He's like, go home, guys, it's over. And they're just repeating the rules. Exactly. First rule of Fight Club is, and they're not even listening to him, and they kick him out. And there's that famous quote: "It's like the worst thing about starting a cult is you're surrounded by cultists." So he's completely lost control of it.
Yes.
And even when he's in the hospital, they're like, "Yeah, don't worry, sir. We're waiting for you," and everything like this.
That is very scary, both in the movie and the book, and very, very much reminiscent of Dune. Yeah. Okay, so we did it. We summed it up. So to finish the story, last question was, when did you realize, Tyler, it doesn't exist?
As soon as I picked up the book.
Because I didn't. I mean, the movie, when you first, the first thing you did. For me, I didn't realize until the very end of the movie. I was so naive and I was so mind blown. I was like, oh my God. I remember I was like so on the edge of my seat. I think the movie worked so well for me in the sense of hiding it, that they are, and at the same time dropping clues.
I mean, in the movie, I think it's harder to notice just because we are so used to the fact that it's two different actors and they look so different from each other. So your brain is ingrained with the fact that these are two different people. For me personally, I don't know if this is one of the reasons why my reading experience was not as good as other people. I knew from the start because I was told. Mm-hmm. I pretended to ignore the fact for the whole book.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if and when I would have noticed otherwise.
I think for me in the movie was like, I watched it with a university friend's brother who's sort of quite kind of, I don't want to say druggy, but he was kind of into the drugs. But we were watching that because there's at the beginning when he's making the copies, there's a little flash of Tyler Durden come up like a frame. I was like, did you see that? That's like Brad Pitt. He's like, what?
Yeah, huh? I remember.
And then at the end when he confronts Tyler Durden in the hotel room and he's just looking at me like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't really... Oh, it's kind of mind-blowing as well. I was like, what? What's going on? And then, yeah, it wasn't until like the final sort of scene that I kind of realized what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So then,
because as well, like in the book...
I guess similar to me.
Sorry, back to the movie where he's sort of beating himself up in front of the boss. In the book, he does it twice. Mm-hmm. He does it with a projectionist and the hotel.
Yeah, I remember that. Waiter. Even more...
manager or something as well. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a part it says that it reminds me of my first fight or something with Tyler. It's quoted in the book as well.
Yeah, Tyler says, like, when essentially he understands that, they are the same person, Tyler tells him, like, that night I told you you were not fighting me, you were fighting, like, everything that's wrong with your life or something like that. So, yeah, there was kind of, like, one of the biggest clues. I think, to me, in the book, the biggest clue is throughout the book, so many times there is the quote of, I know because Tyler knows. Like, I know, yes. He says that, like, all the time.
Right. So what I wanted to do was just take turns and, like, say just a random thing that you wanted to mention until we run out of those, because I have a bunch, but they're very short. So I guess I'll start with very simple, like, point. That's an example. Like random things we liked from the book or that stuck with you or something. Like one of the things I constantly say in life is like the one time, one use, one instant friend.
One serving friend.
People and
single serving friend,
That really touched me when I was watching the movie. I remember I was like, yeah, this is so... Modern life is so weird in this sense. Like you meet somebody and you're never gonna see them again, and you have this like kind of friendship that's kind of freeing, that you can do anything you want, and at the same time it's kind of doomed immediately, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm here with this guy, and so yeah, just a quick note. Anything you want to talk about? Go for it.
Just so going back to the book a little bit, that part where he's making the hand on the beach. Someone said that like when he's sitting in the hand, that's supposed to be like he's sitting in the hand of God.
Yeah, I heard that like several different analyses on that.
Okay.
That's like it was part, like as you said, it was sitting in the hand of God, and some other people say it's kind of like a reflection of like Tyler is like a child and is trying to build his father, something like that.
Okay.
I didn't think that deeply at all.
Yeah, that scene just flew over me. I was just, okay.
He's building a hand on the beach.
Yeah, and there are logs, and I bet he's got a giant log, and it's probably gonna sit with its log on the log. That's where I was at when I was reading it.
That's probably the correct interpretation as well. Yeah. You never know. Yeah.
So next one is Paolo, I guess.
Well, okay, I'll say this. So when we were talking about making this episode of the podcast, I told Philip that I had this essay I had in my mind I had never written about Fight Club. So I don't want to make it too long. So I'll try to. Yeah.
Here it comes. Brace yourselves.
So as I was saying before, like one of the reasons why I like Fight Club stuck to me, and I think one of the reasons why it's so popular is that, and it's what also you guys were saying, which is like it has so many different ways to be read and so many different things people can see in it. To me, the interesting way of reading the whole book is as a story about chaos as truth and order as a lie. And what I mean by that is this. In the main character case, right, he has like this real identity and this fake identity, which is Tyler. And at the beginning of the story, he's presented as this guy who's essentially living a lie. And he is extremely organized with everything. Like he mentions that, for example, every time he travels, he always brings the same clothes and everything is categorized. And he seems like the kind of person who's like super organized with all of these things. But he can't sleep because he's essentially living in this lie. And the reasons why he can sleep when he goes to the support groups is because the support groups have reality, represent reality. Because these people have no more control over their life. So essentially, again, there is lack of order, lack of control, which makes them real. And, reapproaching the reality allows him to sleep, essentially. Gives him peace. And Marla kind of breaks this because she's an element of falsehood, which breaks this, heaven of reality. And which essentially creates Tyler because, once he can't find truth anymore, not even in this place, then he has to kind of expel this need for reality, creating Tyler. And the reason why I mentioned like this, Tyler is the lie, is that Tyler creates this Project Mayhem and the Fight Club, which are supposed to be chaos, right? But if you think about it, it's actually the exact opposite, which is why I said that order is a lie. Project Mayhem and Fight Club, like everyone remembers the rules, right? They have a lot of rules. They are super strict. They are super order, and you must follow everything that is being said. So essentially, they are exactly the opposite of chaos. They are exactly the opposite of anarchy. Like they pretend like they are, trying to achieve anarchy and all of these things and reset society. But actually, what they're doing is exactly the opposite. It's just that, again, it's a big lie they're telling themselves, which connects to the fact that Tyler himself is a lie. Like, he's not a real person, and everything Tyler says is a lie. There are so many instances in the story where he's talking to the main character, to the narrator, and essentially everything he says is a lie. So, yeah, to me, the reason why before I mentioned like Marla's character arc is that while the main character represents these two extremes, right? Well, Tyler is like this super, like, essentially fascist order, super, like, untruthful, and the main character is just desperate to find any truth and any freedom. Marla is kind of like the character which goes from not one extreme to another, but like from imbalance to balance, because of what Paul said before. Like, she kind of has cancer, and in the end she might have cancer again, but she refuses to learn, which is essentially her reappropriating of her own freedom, of saying, I don't need the support groups anymore. I don't need to pretend something anymore in order to find some truth. I can just create my own truth, and I can live my own life any way I want, even though essentially this is exactly the opposite. Like, I might condemn myself to die because of cancer. And to me that's kind of represents, the paradigm and the solution to the paradigm that the main character is stuck in. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very proud.
That's very deep.
Yeah,
I can't follow that up with anything.
Of the day. Yeah, here. Paul doesn't know we always do thought of the day of the Japan podcast. I always ramble about some complicated, convoluted idea. Very proud of you, Paul. Prime time thought of the day.
I'm hoping editing can cut enough of this to make it entertaining.
No, it was really interesting to think about. You're right. I like the idea of chaos and order. It's interesting. And the more we talk about all these things, the more I appreciate this. I really like this it's very clever, the arcs of the characters and what it's trying to say.
You read the comic, didn't you? The Fight Club 2.
Yeah, so before we get into that, I just wanted to get over some like quick things, and one of them was very similar to what Paolo just was talking about, and that's in the movie they keep saying in the book also that you cannot really be free until you lose everything. And you are not your things, you are not your podcast, you are not your pants, you are not your house. Like people locking themselves into something, and they are not allowing themselves to just let go of possessions and relationships. And this was also very like life-changing for me at the time, because I always based my life decisions on like having security and owning things and having them so to speak forever. Like you would have this thing that you value and you cannot imagine that you will not have it like as a younger person, and then you think about it as this is like a staple in my life. At the time it was of course my computer, and I couldn't imagine that my computer would be destroyed or something, and then I completely changed my opinion or perspective on okay, I'll just think of computers as things, of course, and I'll just trash them.
Yeah.
And until this movie, I didn't really think about that.
That's what I was reading about yesterday. Like, I forget the philosopher, and he was saying, like, okay, look at a cup. What's it made of? It's made of ceramic. What does it do? It holds water. Don't think of the beautiful art on the outside, or as it is a gift from someone. You know, because one day it will break. Nothing is permanent. So,
exactly.
I think that kind of, it does tie into the movie and the book a lot. That, what is the quote? It says, we buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Yeah, so I'm going back to my new thing. Is like Marcus Aurelius points out repeatedly, is that people whose opinions we covet are not all that great. They're flawed, they're distracted, and wild by all sorts of silly things themselves. So, there you go.
Yeah. And very similar to that is like experiencing like the dirt, reality, raw nature makes you appreciate the nice things so much more, which living in the, like squatting in the empty house in the movie, how they have no water and stuff. I've been in places like that for reasons undisclosed, and lived in places and showered in places and stayed overnight in places for reasons undisclosed. And I always remember this, and it gives you something like to push yourself. This is why I go to Niigata by bicycle 7 days, 500 kilometers by bicycle, because you can feel, you know, what it's really like. There is no pretension, nothing is controlling you, holding you. You're literally doing whatever the fuck you want, and then you just sleep in a bush with your bicycle, I guess. And it's bullshit. But
and you wonder why I don't want to come along with you on your bike trips.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
I want a hotel room and a shower and a bed. I'm sorry, I am superficial.
Like it really builds character, like not to be cliche or something. Like we talked about this on the last episode of the Mind Like Japan podcast, if you remember Brad. So I got messages from listeners that in the first episode, when he was on the Japan podcast, which was episode like, I think it was like 12 or something. And then he was again and again, and I think recently we did like 25 or something. And I got a message, and somebody sent me a message, and they said, Brad's a new person. What happened? Oh, I listened to the previous episodes. You're crazy, and you dragged him through hell on the bicycle. Please start a company and make people do that, because they are such nicer and better people after having experienced that. And I was like, this is the most backhanded compliment I've ever heard, like, because they said in the email they didn't like Brad at all in the first episode, and they were so pleased and amazed how nice of a guy he is now when we talked in the recent episode.
You changed him. You broke him down and built him back up.
So I don't think I changed him, but I think I kickstarted something very positive with like a very raw, like you cannot lose anything, you just to the bare minimum, bottom of the barrel experience, which is very valuable to how you live and perceive things.
Yeah, definitely.
Because when you get stuck into like a comfortable, cozy level of living in Japan and having no problem ever going and everything's too clean, you cannot even fathom how bad things could be and how dirty things are actually and what actually happens, like what the chaos actually is like. And if you put yourself through an experience that's the opposite, it makes you actually see what it's like really. Like, it's very valuable. So I think that's why the writer is a part of the Cacophony Club, to remind himself regularly, because it's very easy to be mellow about it and forget this.
Can I say something?
Just punched a bit to remember that.
Can I just... Sorry.
What you just said is
I was just going to say, can you just meditate on it?
No. What you just said is a big Dune reference. Because that's literally what Duke later says. When he says, not like, I don't remember if later or like someone else says that the Atreides paid the price that humanity always pays when they're comfortable for too long.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly the same shit. Okay.
They grew weak.
Yeah, exactly. That ties to my next point I have here that I want to quickly mention. I love the scene where they drive in a car and he's about to like crash and like gamble if they're gonna survive it and maybe die. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna crash this car in 1 minute. What do you want to do before you want to die? And one of the like Project Mayhem members is like, I'm gonna build a house. I'm gonna have a wife. I'm gonna have 2 children. And then he's like to the main character, what do you want to do before you die? And he's like, I don't know. What the
Ride
fuck?
a horse.
He's gonna crash the car. Buy the horse.
In the book, so it's a mechanic who's driving the car and he's like swerving into traffic. And he's saying like, you know, countdown, we're going to have impact in 10, 9. What do you want to do before you die? And even the narrator is like sort of struggling with the question, I think. So.
Yeah, so there are so many things. I guess I've exhausted what I wanted to mention. Maybe last point was that if you don't have anything to lose, you have the most to gain, and therefore you're the most dangerous and like daring and like most ambitious person, which I think is so true.
Do you think people are actually evil or out to do bad?
No, not at all. I mean, in order to be able to do stuff you want, you have to lose stuff. Usually, not always, but most of the times. Like to do things you dream about and you want to achieve, and to actually like go for the freedom you ideally want, you have to throw things away and just let them go. That's
Ozymandias' life.
Who's that
Are you
guy?
defending Ozymandias?
Did you say?
It's a king and also Watchmen.
The guy from Watchmen.
Okay. I've only watched the movie.
He's the guy at the end who says, "I've already planned this and already happened." Sorry, too late.
Best villain ever. Ozymandias.
I see. But no, I was going to say that, like, losing everything, I think it would be better just to think about what you said before, like, things aren't permanent.
Yeah, that's very
And
simple.
if you accept that, it's much easier to sort of get on with your life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's quickly mention, I want to mention the comic books. You have no idea about any of those, right?
I've got through 7 or 8 editions. There's 10 in the first one, I think.
Oh, okay.
So
yes,
I got up to 8 last night. So
I'm going to say just very shortly what I think about this, and then we can talk about it more. I don't really have much to say other than Fight Club 2 comic book. I was super excited that it's actually happening. I was like I was always wanted to see what would be the ramifications of what happened in the Fight Club story. Similarly to Dune, like that's so interesting. The sequel, it's so interesting what you can do with that. So I was really hoping he's gonna do it, but he's gonna do it similar like Dune does it. So it's completely flipped on what you would expect the usual story would be. And this comic book did that like a little bit, but it was like clever and I liked the premise, but then it didn't really go anywhere. Or maybe I didn't get it because I was very sad it's not a book, and the comic book was too short and didn't explain much, and I guess it was just suggesting things. Did you feel like that when you read it?
I'm not a huge fan of comics to begin with.
Yeah, me neither.
So
exactly.
It kind of felt like every other comic I've attempted to try and read. It's funny when I
had a good idea.
Yeah, like when I started reading it, and when the author Chuck Palahniuk actually pops up in the, I was that's very meta, and then he makes a comment later on about this is getting too meta or something. I was like,
exactly, and it got too meta.
Yes, but he does make an interesting reference because I've heard him talk about this in interviews as well. That he talks about Joseph Campbell and the role of a secondary father. Did you remember that part in the comic? Yeah. Where he shows up to the old house, the Paper Street house, and he makes a comment that none of this exists or something like this. This house doesn't exist or something. And then Chuck says, oh, that's very Joseph Campbell. And, Joseph Campbell believed in the role of a secondary father, someone who was like a teacher or some other mentor who didn't really have to love you, but could kind of mold you into like being a man kind of thing. He still believes in that kind of concept as well. So, and that these days men tend to not have that sort of secondary father.
So it's not bad, but it's not what I wanted at all. And it's like clever in a sense. And the point is like, okay, maybe I can like say it, like what I liked, because it's not really like a big spoiler.
No, I don't think I'll ever read them.
Do you care, Paolo? Yeah, I don't think. So the idea is that Tyler is like a virus, and it can go into other people's heads, and by killing the person who has the mental like projection of Tyler doesn't kill Tyler. It's the ideology, which is clever. So it's the ideology and the fanatism lives on. Another person can become Tyler, and Tyler is like a mind virus. You can become this martyr person. It all makes sense, like and it's very clever. Yeah, like a meme, exactly. I didn't even say that, I think, in some parts. So, which I also loved. Like, I like memes, obviously. So it was super clever. I like this all. But the story itself, like, things happened, but I didn't feel anything when they happened, and I didn't care about the characters much. And I was like, okay. There's also, so I'm not sure if I'm spoiling this. I'm very sorry, but they have a son also. Is it happened already?
It's revealed at the beginning,
I
yes.
Spoil it. Okay, so I forgot if it wasn't like the third one.
No.
And that's kind of interesting, but also like doesn't go much anywhere. Long story short, it's too meta.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
They are trying to do something that's very hard and I think can be done, but not really. Like the same happened with the Matrix 4 movie. Like the writer was, the first part of the movie was the writer commenting on the industry and like the process of making the movie. And it was super clever. And I loved that part. And then it just went like, just okay, we've done this commentary, now just fuck it.
I didn't mind it.
We bring back all the bad characters. The old characters, the old cast is brought back, and all the characters from the Fight Club movie and all the characters from the Fight Club book are brought back, and some of them come back to life, and some of them are real, and some of them are imaginary, and there's like
Bob comes back as a zombie or something.
Bob comes back, and Chloe comes back as like a soldier in a war. It's like a mess, like imaginary mess of crap that mixes in and then comments on itself.
But it's because there's parts in the comic too where Chuck is sitting in his like rider circles, and he's like, I don't know what to do, kind of thing.
Exactly, and it's true.
Yeah, and he's like, you can't kill off Tyler Durden. It's like killing off like Santa Claus. It's part of the culture now. So what do I do, kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of being clever, but it's just sort of not sticking the landing, I guess. Yeah.
So I still liked it. It was an interesting experiment, and they should have stopped there. And then Fight Club 3 is complete, like, bullshit. Like, there's so much crap, so much imaginary, nothing is real, everything is real. And then the writers, like, come in the story, and then somebody starts complaining that the cat is walking on the notes they're writing for this comic book, and then the writer is, like, complaining about his coffee. Everything's just, like, it's almost as if the writer is making fun of us wanting to read this. It was, like, really bad.
It has cats in it?
Yeah. Yes.
I might read it. Something with a cat. You got me. So Fight Club 3, not recommended. I didn't get anything out of it. I was just so confused and like everything just went over my head. Maybe there is something to it, but I didn't get it. I should get my cat. No, sorry. Me and Paolo distracted.
Okay. And then Fight Club 4 is a joke where he does a video on YouTube and it's a children's comic book. And it's horrible as much as you think it is. To like horrify children, I guess. And he flips the pages and reads it himself, and he like shows the whole thing, and it's amusing if you want to joke for 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, I might check it out.
So I think that's his way of like being done with this.
Hopefully so.
So to round up and finally finish, I want to just mention Mr. Robot and why this is connected and why I think this is the best TV show ever made. Because Fight Club 2 didn't do what I wanted, and Mr. Robot did that so hard. So we talked about this off the podcast. They kind of do a ripoff of Fight Club. not to spoil anything, but it's a very similar kind of twist, but it doesn't mean the story is the same. It just means there is a twist that's the same. And then that's just the first season, but the second and third season, they know you know, and they play on it, which is genius. So they know you're expecting all these things, and they know what you're gonna think, and they do a twist on the twist you want, which is genius. And then they do it 3 more times. And it's like, I was reading the Reddit discussions every episode, every week, and I had the best time ever watching a TV show in my life, because the theories and the things that they are suggesting and what people can get out of it, it's amazing. And like I said, okay, you might know a character doesn't exist, but in the next season, you might not know something is something, and then you think something is something, and they're playing on the thing you think it's gonna to be the twist so hard that you can see it, and they're blowing in your face the things that you wanna see to confirm your like idea that's gonna be the twist, and it's a completely opposite thing, and then you look back at the thing, and you literally see a character tell you what was the answer to the twist, but you didn't hear it because the other character was playing on the twist you expected. And I was like, fuck, this is so clever. So I love it so much.
So it actually got better?
I watched like
it got
half
so
of
much
the
better.
first season.
Because I felt
I think we had this discussion before, but I watched the first half of the first season, and it felt like something that 14-year-old me or 15-year-old me would love. But when I watched it, I was like 23, and it was just I don't care.
Paolo, you have to grow up to become a child again. You're just too much. You're looking at yourself too maturely.
That's not child. That's like teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, like teenage nonsense. I know the answers to all the big questions in life.
The first season is like the model like story that you're describing, and it's good. But it's like, okay, we get it. It's this, and it's done, and it's well made. Fine. Second episode like plays on top of it, and then third season plays on top of that, and like the twists that you are looking for just pile up. And more importantly, the aftermath of Fight Club, like leveling the bank industry and like destroying the economy. What would that actually mean is actually explored, which I didn't expect at all. They actually go into that and beyond that. And I was like, this is so interesting, because they have done and dealt with the part, let's destroy society, and let's actually explore what it looks like when society is destroyed in that sense. And then let's, in the next season, see what we can do about that next, and let's see how that would actually end if that happened. Add onto it, like, experimental episodes where the whole episode nobody speaks, or the whole episode is one camera shot, or the whole episode is like different aspect ratios. They do so many experiments I loved so much. And also the last season 4, is like answering things that they said in the first episode. Like in the second episode they have like this hallucination dream that actually tells you the whole plot of the 4 seasons, but you don't know because you haven't seen it. And then it actually wraps up in a satisfying way. And it wraps up like all this shit you didn't know. It's genius. I love it so hard.
I mean, maybe one day I'll watch it, but I honestly...
That's all I have to say. If you like Fight Club, it's like Fight Club if you changed fighting for hacking and you did a good sequel.
That's probably why you like it, maybe.
Yes, that's exactly what I like it, because I like the technical shit too. It's actually real hacking, what it would actually look like if you actually hacked somebody, not like the usual hacking in movies. That's the only media I've ever seen where it looked realistic.
Not like Hackers. My image of hacking is like the movie Hackers on rollerblades.
Yes.
Absolute shit. Yeah. My reaction to Mr. Robot was like, was it second last episode or something? I was like, it's fucking Fight Club, and felt ripped off and then turned it off.
They even used the song from Fight Club.
I was like, how
and
fucking
at the point
brazen
I was
are
like,
you?
oh my god, this is amazing. I liked it. They acknowledge it.
They did. Well, they had to.
Yeah.
I don't think they had much of a choice.
And the writer of the show is on the show later. Similarly, in the comic book of like Palahniuk is on the show, and he like talks to the camera in the show, and on the show you are part of the show as a character. It's genius.
Oh, he's in it.
Yeah, he's in it. Even you've seen him, but you didn't know it. And it's like I rewatched parts of this, and he's like on the underground on the subway. He's like standing there watching the camera. I'm like, fuck,
I do remember.
And then he comes back in later in the show, and I was like, this fucker. It was like I was so obsessed with this show.
I just don't have time for sitting down and watching TV so much these days. So Because they milk it for all it's worth. They'll try to stretch out the seasons as much as they can, I feel.
This one had to be shortened. This one was planned to be 5 or 6 seasons, and because it wasn't as successful, they crammed 2 seasons in the last one. And I think the last season, thanks to that, is the best season of any television I've ever watched. It's so much clever things. And it's got, I think, 4 of the episodes of the last season are the highest rated TV show episodes ever on IMDb, on the top 10 or something. It's everybody loved it.
I think it got a lot of fame at the start.
I gave it a go.
Got tired very quickly.
I think the thing that killed it was that the first episode was, like you said, a show that people liked, kind of, it was okay. And then the second season was kind of difficult to comprehend in parts, but if you thought about it, it made a lot of sense. And then the third season was even more of that, it went over people's heads. And then the fourth season explained everything, but you had to keep until season 4.
No. I don't want to be dismissive or anything. It's just that, I believe you. You're so enthusiastic about it. I don't know how to respond to that enthusiasm.
The correct response is ban me from talking about it. Literally, my wife Chen, she every time I say Mr. Robot, she's like,
no, but I understand. I am like that with so many different things. So it's fine.
So that's all about Fight Club. Thanks so much for indulging me in ranting about Mr. Robot. And on the next episode, we might do, if you're up for it, be disgusted by masturbation stories or not. You want to do this?
What, my personal ones or in books? They're both pretty fucking horrible.
Did you write it?
I didn't expect that one. If you want to be double cancelled.
That's a good question, actually. Yeah. I showed up to a writer workshop. They said, please don't come back. Sick fuck.
So I guess we'll decide later.
No, thank you.
Thanks so much for talking.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for listening. Rate us on Apple Podcasts, and on the next episode, Cliff Barker's Hellbound Heart that kickstarted the Hellraiser horror movie franchise.